Good morning. I pray that you're having a beautiful morning. I know that I am, and I'm so thankful and so blessed to live to see another day, to know about the great things of God. I titled this video, Can God Help Me and You with Mental Exhaustion or Mental Fatigue? It's the same thing. There's so much stress going on in the world, so much chaos to where it's spilling over in our homes, in our relationships, in our everyday lives. So can God help us with mental exhaustion or mental fatigue or mental drainage? Let's see. Well, the mind becomes a battleground. The mind becomes a battleground when the armor that it needs is missing. We know that this is true because of the chaos that's in the atmosphere. So the mind becomes a battleground when the armor that it needs is missing. Many, if not most of the people we see during our daily commutes that we pass by every day, that we work with, that we pass by in the grocery store, many of them are living in turmoil. And not only are they battling the physical side of life, but they're also battling the mental sides of life, the turmoil, the mental fatigue, the mental exhaustion. And because we can't physically see their mental distress, we're not aware of the pain that they're feeling until they either verbally express it to us or that pain spills over. Once the pain spills over, once they verbally express their pain to us, then we can physically see it and we can offer help. But most of the time, we cannot see someone else's pain if they don't verbalize it to us. A lot of people are good at hiding pain. I was one of those people, so I'm talking to me too. A lot of people are good at hiding pain, and you don't see it until it spills over. And then we're left asking, well, how on earth did he or she do that? I would never have thought that she would have did that, or there's no way that he could have did that. But there was a way because he or she was battling mental distress, mental fatigue, and no one knew it. That's why the armor is so important. That's why. So what is the armor? Like physical exhaustion, mental exhaustion or fatigue is primarily caused by stress and worry, making us feel tired and overwhelmed. And most of the things, this is the key, most of the things that we worry about aren't meant for us to control. So most of these things that we're worried about in our day-to-day lives aren't meant for us to worry about, aren't meant for us to stress over, to have anxiety over. That's why God tells us that faith can move mountains. In 1 Peter 5:7, God tells us clearly to cast our cares upon him because he cares for us. That's a command. That's an order. 1 Peter 5:7, cast our cares upon him because he cares for us. So God is already telling us that, yes, I can help you with mental distress because I created you in this world and I knew the problems that you'd face that before you knew of the problems. So I've already created an outline, a visible outline that you can read to help you, to clearly help you with your mental fatigue. We just got to read, y'all. We got to read. So he tells us to cast our cares upon him because he cares for us. So we're falling into mental exhaustion and states of depression and anxiety because we're stepping in shoes that only God can fill. That's so good. I'm going to say that again. We're falling into mental exhaustion and states of depression and anxiety because we're stepping in shoes that only God can fill. Man cannot fill those shoes. That's why there's so much suicide and depression and anxiety and chaos in the world. Because we're stepping in shoes that only God can fill. When I say we, I'm talking globally. The country, the world. Been there, done that. God didn't create us to worry. He did not place us in a room and label it anxiety. Literally, God did not create us to worry. It's not like he placed us over there somewhere in a room and closed the door and said, I'm going to label this anxiety. That's not the God that we serve. He didn't do that. He created us and gave us a command. And that command is what I stated previously, to cast our cares upon him because he cares so much for us. He cares for us. That's a command. And if we give it to God, I can promise you this, if we give it to God, then the problems that we're facing will be minimized, will go away, because we can't give them to man because man are facing their own problems. Him over there, he's got his own problems going on. Her over there has her own problems going on. So we can't give our problems to man. Yes, we can seek help. That's not what I'm saying. Yes, we can seek professional help. But the greatest help that we can ever seek is that of God. Hi, Sophie. Thank you for watching. This is real truth. So how do we know when we're mentally exhausted? There's physical symptoms and there's mental symptoms. The physical symptoms include feeling tired most of the time, feeling drained. Remember, we're talking about mental fatigue. Fatigue makes us feel tired and drained, sometimes for no reason. We wake up feeling fatigued. We wake up feeling fatigued. Loss of appetite or change in appetite. I experienced this recently when my mother passed. Although I did not feel her death like other people may have felt their parents' death. I mourned her, but it was different. I did not know that I was still in mourning until I noticed that I did not have an appetite. I was not eating. It showed in my weight and everything. I was mentally fatigued. I was mourning. So a loss of appetite, muscle aches, joint pains, and frequent sickness. If you're always having a cold, headaches, migraines, going to the doctor for this ailment or that ailment, check your mental capacity. Check your mental health. It's a real thing. Mental symptoms of mental exhaustion or fatigue includes motivational loss or motivation loss or loss of motivation. You just don't want to do anything. The dreams that you once had, you could care less about. If you've had dreams that you couldn't help but think about or talk about or, wish upon or pray about, and you no longer want to do those dreams, there is something wrong. Don't be fooled. Don't be fooled by your mind. There's something wrong. Check your mental health. Having a negative outlook on life, on the things around you. And self-doubt. That's a big one. Self-doubt is something that kills more dreams than naysayers ever could. Self-doubt kills more dreams than naysayers ever can. We doubt ourselves before we even get started. Therefore, putting up that mountain or that wall, we block ourselves before we even get started. Come on, y'all. Let's stop doubting ourselves, detaching from those that you love, from friends, families, isolating yourself, sitting home, in self-pity, feeling sorry for yourself, and making up every excuse in the world why it's okay to be in the state that you're in, why it's okay to be sitting alone all the time. That's detachment. That is a symptom of mental distress and fatigue, mental exhaustion, loneliness. You can be surrounded by hundreds of people, but still feel lonely. That's a problem. Loneliness. Some other symptoms include alcohol and substance abuse. Now, let's make this clear. This includes food addictions too. Because when we hear of substance abuse and alcohol abuse or addiction, we don't correlate that word with food addiction, because that's an okay addiction to have. If you go to religious organizations, most people will speak on addiction, but not include real addictions like food addiction or porn addiction or watching too much TV. Those are addictions. We know that there's not one sin greater than the other except for blasphemy of the Holy Spirit. The addiction is an addiction. Whether it's substance abuse, recreational drugs, the addiction is an addiction. Food addiction, whatever. It's still an addiction. Like I said, isolating yourself or withdrawing from those you love. Mental exhaustion. These are all symptoms. But what I find the most detrimental, this is what I find the most detrimental about mental fatigue, is the narrowing of our innate spiritual abilities. Because when we're mentally fatigued, our energy is blocked. We lose the ability to impact those around us, to impact the world like we were made to impact the world. When we're exhausted mentally, it works heavily on our spiritual abilities. When we are mentally drained, we become spiritually drained, causing us to retract from God. So it's like God is there. He says, I'm always here. I will never leave or forsake you. But when we're suffering in mental distress, we detach from God and we go the other way, although he's over there too. But we run from the Father because we can see nothing but the mental distress. We can see nothing but the mountain in front of us. When God tells us that the faith, the size of a mustard seed, y'all, can move the mountain. We just have to believe. So that to me is the most detrimental side of mental exhaustion. We retract from God, and equally our prayer life suffers. And as I stated before, our mind's structural support system becomes unstable. So we're all over the place. We're here, we're there, we're over there, and nothing is being accomplished because we're so mentally drained. Talking to myself too. So nothing is being accomplished. We're just all over the place. This hinders us. This hinders our abilities to touch those people that we're meant to touch. Because we can't even touch ourselves. We're out of line with self. So we cannot align with self. We cannot align with him, her, them over there. Because we're out of alignment. It's so important. This is why recognizing and releasing mental fatigue is so critical. It's so critical. I know that the world is in a challenge state. We're in a state of chaos. We have the virus going on. People have lost jobs. People are still losing homes. People are battling financial stresses. It's just so much chaos in the world. So that is true. The chaos in the world is true. and so many other challenges. But there are mountains, these mountains that I just spoke of. Those are mountains that only God can move. But to move those mountains requires the faith. The faith. Because when we're in the faith, I spoke on this recently, when we're in the faith, there's no doubt, there's no second thought about if those mountains can be moved. Because we're in the faith. That means we believe without a shadow of a doubt that God is going to move those mountains. Not that he is, that he already has. We just have to catch up to it. Because that's the God that we serve. We just have to catch up to it. It's already moved when we're operating in the faith. That's important. That's important. You know, we can't rely on ourselves alone. It takes a partnership. That partner is God. Yes, we have our loved ones, our significant others, our friends, our families, but they can only do so much. They can only come so close. The only one capable of coming closer is God. I know nobody wants to hear it. Everybody keeps saying, you know, we're preaching the same message. Yesterday, I had someone reach out to me through someone else. And they stated how some of the messages that I'm bringing forth, this is on my personal Facebook page, may not be resonating with them anymore because I exclude them. And I said, okay, look at the enemy trying to make me feel irrelevant. That's why we cannot rely on man. We have got to rely on God because there's always relevancy in God. God is always relevant. So rely on God because it takes a partnership with the King for us to do anything great. When we're truly operating in who God created us to be, and that's greatness, we're only operating in that because of the relationship that we have with the King. It's real stuff. It's real talk. It's real truth. Those that are truly walking and working in greatness for the Father cannot do it themselves. They have a connection, a partnership with the King. That's the only way. And I like I said, I know some people say, oh, it's the same old message. Well, that same old message is truth. It's real truth. Okay. So if you're struggling with long time mental fatigue, I say long time because stress is something that we all deal with from time to time, but mental fatigue is usually caused by long periods, so long drawn out periods of stress. So that's the difference between regular stress and mental exhaustion or distress or fatigue. Long drawn out points of stress. So if you're dealing with this or if you feel chained by the stress, there are 3 steps that you can take to release and heal from emotional fatigue or from mental fatigue. Step 1 is to pray. That's going to always be the first step. And if you are an atheist watching this, I'm going to urge you to pray. Even if you don't want to hear it, I'm going to urge you to pray because God says to pray about all things. Call upon him and he is there always. Always. So if you are someone who has detached from God because you feel like, well, God let you down at this moment in time, or God took your mother and father away, or God allowed you to go through this battle, or this pain, or someone raped you or molested you, or did this sickness, that sickness. Just understand that there's 2 battles going on in the world that we live in. Give him a second chance. I urge you. Okay. So pray about all things. And if you're not praying or if you're not into praying, please work on getting into praying. If you're not into praying, please work on getting into praying because the goal is to shift our focus off of the problem and onto God. Step 2, remove the stress. This is hard for a lot of people to hear because you may have been at your job for years. You may have been over here, for that length of time, or over there for that length of time. And it feels so comfortable. It's so secure and safe. Especially if it's a job, you have that paycheck every 2 weeks or every week. So it's like you're depending on that check to get you through. So we have that comfort, we have that. It just makes us feel good, even though we're in torment mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. We hold on to things because they're comfortable. They're safe. We have got to remove the stress. Let go of the stressor and give it to God. Let go of the stressor and give it to God. I urge you to do this. Saints, Christians, followers of Christ, we must learn to release the things that we cannot control. Talking to self too. Man, I love speaking to myself. We must learn to release the things that we cannot control. And I know you're saying that's easier said than done. It is. Been there, done that. It's easier said than done, y'all. I promise you it is. But when you can release it and truly give that element, that stressor, that pain inducer to the Father, when you can release that thing and know that God has it, oh my, you've reached a whole new height. You have accomplished a whole new level in the Father. I promise you. I promise you. So I urge you to do this. And as followers of Christ, it's vital for us because we have a job to do. We're to touch those. We're the light, of the world. So we have a job to do. So it's very vital for us to release the mental fatigue. This is where faith comes into play. And like I said, I spoke on this recently. As believers, we must step out of a measure of faith and step into the measure of faith because there's a huge difference. There is a huge difference in a measure and the measure. I'm going to post that link to the video in the description. If you can do that, if you can understand the difference between the two, you step into it and then you align yourself. Like I said, you're reaching a whole new level of being a follower of Christ or being a Christian. Some people say that's religious. Well, so yes, we're just remove the stress. And then we have to release. Don't just remove the stress, but release it and keep moving forward. Something about mental fatigue is that you can feel like you've removed the stress, but then walk right back into the stressor. Because you're so comfortable being in that space. So for instance, those people that are always sick and God have healed them, they continuously walk back into that space, calling it a testimony. And I'm not saying that giving testimony is bad. It is not. Let me make that clear. But God has healed them, meaning that he's released you from that. Let's stop leaning on it now. I'm not telling you to forget what I did for you, but now it's time for you to move forward and start impacting others. So we have to not just remove the stress, but we have to release it and don't go back to the stressor. Because believe it or not, a lot of testimony, especially if you've dealt with a detrimental sickness or physical abuse or emotional abuse or anything like that, is a stressor if you take yourself back to it. So if you aren't fully healed, or if you have not allowed yourself to fully heal, that thing is going to stress you something out. It's a stressor. It induces chaos and stress and fatigue. So it's important that we release that. Seek help. These are other things to do. Start a gratitude journal. I promise you, I write every day. It helps. What are we grateful for? Man, start writing. You never know. You can take that thing, compile it, and create a book. Create a bestseller. Exercise. That's a hard one. That's a hard one for me. Get into nature. Take a walk. Focus on the positives rather than the negatives. It's much easier for the world globally, from what it seems or for what it appears to be, is to focus on the negative. If we turn on the news, that's all we hear. There's nothing positive going on the news. So, but in your own atmosphere, you can focus on the positives rather than the negatives, and set aside time for yourself. This is going to help that mental exhaustion just go away. Take time out for yourself. Don't think you have to be a people pleaser and please everyone around you. Start pleasing yourself, because if you please yourself, meaning that you're taking time for yourself, you will have enough energy to give to others only if you wish to. That's also a key. The power of no. The power of no. You will not believe how difficult it is for people to say no. It is very complex. The last one, and this is very, very critical. Understand who you are. Understand who you are and your purpose for this life. Because if we don't know who we are and why we're here, we're just floating. Just floating around, waiting to die. We're not impacting ourselves. We're not impacting anyone else. We're not bearing fruit. We're planting seeds, grass seeds, and hoping to obtain fruit from those seeds when we don't know who we are and our purpose. So it's very vital, because if we know who we are while we're here, if you know your purpose and who you are, then the mental fatigue and the long time stress is less likely to occur. It is proven. Do the research. It is less likely to occur. And because you're working in your power and purpose, not only are you happy, but your entire atmosphere, those around you, are happy. They're benefiting from your happiness. Because when you're happy, you're able to touch that person. Then you can help that person. So that's why stepping out of mental fatigue and mental exhaustion and, distress and all of these things are vital, because God did not create you in a state of anxiety. Like I said, He did not close you behind a door and label it anxiety. He created you great, awesome, phenomenal, whatever positive word you want to apply to yourself. That is how God created you. I promise. So I love you all so much. Thank you for joining me. I'm also going to place a valuable PDF link to help you understand and overcome the mental fatigue, because it is a real thing, especially amongst followers of Christ, Christians, whatever we want to call ourselves. It is a real thing. It is hindering our abilities to impact the world. So we have got to come together to help one another. I love you all so much. Thank you for joining me. Happy Saturday. Have a blessed one. Bye.